My water broke as my husband drove me to the hospital. He forces me out of the car. "You're so filthy. You walk the rest of the way to the hospital, lol." A few hours later, I find him in critical condition at the hospital. "Hey, get out of the damn car." My husband grabbed me by the arm, forcefully pulled me out of the car, knocking me to the ground in the process, took a look at the seat I was lying on, and sighed heavily. Then he looked down at me, lying down, clutching my swollen belly on the cold asphalt, doing what I could to power through the increasingly excruciating contractions, and said, "You're so fricking filthy. You walk all the way to the hospital from here on out. Don't spoil yourself just because you have a stomachache." He got back in the car, started the engine, and drove off into the night. I had to protect my baby, and so I took action to do so, in spite of the pain. This is the story of how my husband's values weren't what I hoped they were, and I hope we can learn how being greedy for materialistic entities, enough so that you place those above the important people in your life, can really screw up your relationships in society. Trust is a precious thing, and while it takes time to establish, once broken, it becomes extremely difficult to build back up, if not impossible. Hopefully, we will just how important mutual trust and cooperation between people really is, and how it can give rise to very precious moments in life. My name is Kobe, and I am a 25-year-old full-time housewife. I am in my 10th month of pregnancy and expecting a baby girl very soon. My husband, Nathan, is 2 years older than me and works in a local office. I met him through the trickery of a mutual friend, actually. She suddenly called me one day, and with an extremely panicked voice, urged me relentlessly to get to her place. Judging from the tone of her voice and the apparent racket in the background, I assumed something terrible had happened, and without a smidge of doubt as to her true intentions, I rushed to her house, which was a 10-minute drive away from my apartment. I arrived breathless and sweating, and after frantically ringing her doorbell for 2 minutes straight, she opened the door. Very calmly. She donned a very smug expression on her face, and she leaned against the doorway, eyeing me from top to drenched bottom. "You sure came here quick, lol. What is the meaning of this? I thought you were in a crisis." I was, but the crisis wasn't about me. "Come on, there's something I want to show you." She grabbed her keys, and we got into her car. I pestered her with questions during the ride, but all she ever did was smile. We eventually got to a popular seafood restaurant downtown, and right as we went in, I saw her wave her hand at someone in the distance. As I followed her gaze, there sat the most attractive man I'd ever seen. That man was none other than Nathan. I was upset with my friend at first, but as the night drew on, I gradually forgot all about it, and went on to have a good time. One thing led to another, and Nathan and I became a couple, and after 15 months together, we tied the knot. All of this happened 2 years ago, and we've been happily married ever since. Nathan was a very buff, very talkative man, with a jovial spirit similar to that of Jackie Chan. He seemed like the right man for me, but there was one thing that bothered me. Nathan loves cars and values them above all else, perhaps even above me. Even before we were married, he spent all day on his days off washing and maintaining his prized car and going out with his friends who shared the same hobby. I used to go out with them at first, but after I got pregnant, what with the morning sickness and all, waiting for him to come home had become a routine. When Nathan returned from his drive with his friends that day, he would come into the living room and started taking off his clothes by throwing his socks on the floor. He often left his clothes on the floor after he took them off, and I always told him that he should at least put them in the laundry basket. And then he would feel like I was nagging him about it, but he would just say it was a hassle and never put them away. I was hoping that he would change his bad habits as soon as possible after the baby was born. "Nathan, please remember to put the laundry in the basket." "I meant to put it in right as you said so." I picked up the socks that had been thrown on the floor, mindful of my growing belly. "You always say that, but you never do what I ask you." "Shut up, Kobe." "Think about it, Nathan. If a baby puts a sock you took off in his mouth, that would be disgusting, wouldn't it? Whoever notices that should clean it up, and it's your job to make sure the baby doesn't put anything in his mouth. That's why I'm saying we have to be careful in our own ways. I can't take care of you as much once the baby's born, honey. Don't put me in the same box as a baby Kobe, all right? I can take care of myself. Then why can't you just put the laundry in the basket? Oh my God, could you please just shut the hell up? He left his undressed clothes in the living room and locked himself in the bedroom. I was angry with his childish attitude, and to avoid further trouble that night, I put the futon down in the guest room and went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning on Sunday, he was not home. He must have gone for an early morning drive. No matter how many times I called his phone thereafter, he never answered. Neither of us didn't even know when the baby was due, and I was appalled at his behavior in ignoring my calls. I'd told him time and again that I'd been having irregular but labor-like pains for a few days. I spent the rest of the day doing housework, checking the contents of the hospital bag and just relaxing in general, and by the time the sun went down, I was having regular more contractions. At the moment, I thought I was going into labor. I decided to record the time each contraction occurred, just as I had been taught to do at the hospital. When the contractions became 10 minutes apart, I called the hospital and was told to get there as quickly as I could. I called Nathan, despite the fact that I knew it was going to be futile, but he did answer his phone this time, and he sounded grumpy. Could you, stop? With the incessant pestering? What the hell do you want? I think I'm going into labor, honey. I called the hospital, and they want me to come as quickly as possible. What? Oh, okay. Sorry. I didn't realize. I'll be home very soon. Just wait for me, okay? Breathe, just as we practiced together. I'll be there in 7 or 8 minutes. Thanks, Nathan. Ooh. Breathe, honey, breathe, and stay calm. You're doing great. I'll be there soon. Hang in there. Nathan never hung up the phone. He went on encouraging me while he drove home. It made the pain more bearable, knowing that my husband cared about me and was there with me every step of the way. About 5 minutes later, he came home. We slowly got me into the car, loaded it up with everything he needed, and headed to the hospital. I lay down in the back seat and endured the pain. The contractions were now occurring every 30 seconds. Then I heard a popping sound, and a large amount of warm, fresh liquid came running down between my legs. An unbearably strong smell quickly filled the car. Oh! What the hell is that awful smell? Nathan muttered grimly, pinching his nose. I think my water broke, Nathan. I've got a pad on, but you might want to wrap a towel around me. It's in the hospital bag. Could you get it for me, please? I hear a quiet tisk coming from Nathan in the driver's seat. He quickly pulled over to the side of the road and opened the backseat door with an angry huff. All right, out of the damn car. I can't move, honey. These contractions are getting stronger. Ah. Oh, for the love of Pete. My husband grabbed me by the arm, forcefully pulled me out of the car, knocking me to the ground in the process, took a look at the seat I was lying on, and sighed heavily. Damn it. Are the towels in the hospital bag? Yes, Ooh. I put a large black towel in the bag. Oh, God damn it. What are you going to do about this, eh? Come on, help me wipe this fricking mess up. I can't, honey. I can't even stand up for crying out loud. I'm sorry, but can you just wipe up later and get me to the hospital, please? Ooh! My water broke and my contractions are getting more and more frequent. Don't be fricking selfish! Nathan yelled as he slammed my hospital bag on me as I was lying on the street. What was that for? Shut up! You made such a mess and I'm definitely going to hold you responsible for this. Are you fricking kidding me? Responsible for what? I'll have you get all our seats reupholstered. I don't care about that right now, Nathan. Please, take me to the hospital. Huh? That's what you think? Then he looked down at me, lying down, clutching my swollen belly on the cold asphalt, doing what I could to power through the increasingly excruciating contractions, and said, Don't you dare mess up my precious baby. You're so fricking filthy, you walk all the way to the hospital from here on out. Don't spoil yourself just because you have a stomachache. After yelling at me, he got back in the car, started the engine, and drove off into the night. I don't care anymore. You're on your fricking own, were the last words I heard from him that night. I was so stunned by what had just happened, I didn't know what was going on. I was left alone on the dark night road with only streetlights, unable to speak out as the overwhelming pain came over me again. The pain felt like a thick nail being plunged into me from under my belly many times. I felt more fluid slowly forming a sticky puddle underneath, and my fear became even more overwhelming. I had to protect my baby. I thought as I endured the contractions, which were getting even more frequent. I decided to take action to protect my baby. I took out my phone and called a certain number. Not too long afterwards, I could hear the sound of ambulance sirens in the distance, as though the pain was causing me to have auditory hallucinations. I managed to make it to the hospital and went into labor, almost losing consciousness several times. My water had broken, so I was given antibiotics and other medications, and I decided not to think about my heartless husband for the sake of the little life that was soon to be born. 15 hours after first going into labor, my daughter was finally born, and she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. The next day, however, Nathan did not show up at the hospital. My parents and my in-laws, the Davises, who had rushed to the hospital, did not say anything to me on the topic of Nathan, but I did not feel like asking them, considering what he had done. 5 days after the birth, my daughter, who I'd named Carly, were discharged from the hospital. There were no complications with myself or with the baby, and the birth was a big success. During those 5 days when I was hospitalized, Nathan never came to the hospital, or even called me at all. When my in-laws came to pick me up, I still hadn't seen him. The room was exactly as it had been the day I was admitted to the hospital, and nothing had been moved, which was surprising, given how excited Carly's grandparents had been when they first laid eyes on her. If you don't mind me asking, what happened to Nathan? They looked at each other, and then at me with a somewhat melancholic gaze. Actually, he had an accident last week, and is in the hospital right now. An accident? We didn't tell you until now, because we didn't want you to worry about him after you had just given birth, dear. He's not in any danger of losing his life, but he'll need to stay in the hospital for a while. Kobe, you have the baby to take care of. You leave Nathan to us. So, according to my in-laws, my husband had gotten in a car accident right after he abandoned me on the road that evening. He was hit from behind by a careless driver from behind and seriously injured himself as his car tumbled down a roadside ditch into thick-trunked tree. He was soon rushed to a nearby general hospital, where he still was, recovering. The Davises had assured me they would take care of him for me, but I just had to see him. I still wanted to confront him about the near atrocity he had committed. And so, I left my darling Carly with my in-laws and went to the hospital where Nathan was staying. When he noticed me coming into his hospital room, he waved at me from the bed without bothering sitting up. Was the baby born? Oh, you were wondering about that? But of course, it's my child too, for crying out loud. My child too. Right. Did you seriously walk to the hospital after I left you on the road? No. We registered with several companies to arrange for a labor cab in case you couldn't drive me to the hospital yourself for whatever reason, remember? Labor cabs? Oh yeah. You did mention you had registered for something like that. I quickly got out my phone, called one of those companies, and they quickly dispatched a unit to get into the hospital right away. And the driver was someone who'd taken a life-saving course, and he was a big help in calming me down to go through with the birth. What? Come on, Kobe, that's cheating. I thought you'd be in a little bit more trouble. What the hell are you talking about? If the cab hadn't come, my baby and I might have been in serious jeopardy, you know. Do you really understand the severity of the crime you committed that night? You could have gone to the hospital yourself. If you and the baby are safe now, then all's well in the end, eh? And I'm sure glad it is well. Well, you know, except for this. He gestured to himself in his current condition. Why did he have the nerve to say all these ridiculous things with such a nonchalant expression on his face? I could feel my love for him rapidly cooling down into feelings of hatred, vengeance, and disgust. Why did you do that? Why did you leave in the middle of nowhere all alone on the road? It's because your water broke and completely ruined my car. Couldn't you have, held it all in or something? If it was something that I could control, Nathan, believe me when I tell it wouldn't have happened. I know how much you love that car. Hell, I wouldn't even be surprised if you loved that car more than you love me, or your new daughter, Carly. And I also know that you'd be really upset if literally anything happened to it. So trust me, if I could have held my water in, I would have done so or died trying. I don't know if you know this, but the back seat was soaking wet, and I couldn't stand the stench anyway. Smelled like raw fish, it did, and it was ridiculous. Okay, I admit it. I should thought about putting plastic sheets down on the seats in case my water did break in your car, but I mean, duh. If you'd been stronger and more capable of controlling your body, none of this wouldn't have happened. But I still don't think that's even a reason to drag a pregnant woman about to give birth out of the car and leave her there at all. What the hell? Are you all saying it was my fault? If I'm somehow at fault for what happened that night, it's only because I didn't consider the possibility that my water might break, Nathan. Oh, but that's negligent enough, ain't it? If there's even a slight chance you were going to get that wet, you should have been more careful, damn it. It's still messy back there as far as I'm concerned. How dare you call the amniotic fluid that protects your own child dirty? I feel sorry for the baby that had to be put in that foul-smelling stuff, Lowell. It makes me sick just thinking about it. I beg your pardon? And also, you're the one who called me dirty in the first place. Would you be offended if I called you dirty? Huh? But I never said that. Yes, you fricking did. You used to say that all the time, actually. Telling me to put my own laundry in the basket, especially my socks, day after goddamn fricking day. Since you got pregnant, it's like you've become a cowardly germaphobe, cleaning up as though you want to brag about how clean you are. Bragging about? Okay, he had a point there. I was a little paranoid while I was pregnant, mostly because I was sure that my house was an infested quarantine zone as far as an immunodeficient baby was concerned. And I was concerned that nothing unwanted should happen to my growing infant at all. But was it wrong for a wife to ask her husband to at least clean up his fair share of clothes? If you've learned your lesson from this, it's that you don't ever call me dirty again. You still don't know what you did, do you? The child was born safe and sound, and you're here alive and healthy. That's all that matters. And by the way, my car was wrecked because of the accident. With the alimony from you and the allowance for childbirth and childcare, how much of a deposit will I get? I wonder. You put people's lives in danger, and you don't even flinch. You merely laugh it off and feel sorry for yourself because you got your precious car destroyed and nearly destroyed yourself in the process. All you care about is your car. The man that lay before me was no longer Nathan Davis. He was a monster with a brick for a brain. Reasonable communication was just impossible, and talking to him just made me feel sick to my stomach, and I thought I was done with morning sickness. I can't believe you, Nathan. Why do you fricking care more about cars than people's lives? Why the hell would anyone care about that? And what, pray tell, do you mean by that? Not only did you put my own life in danger, but you even put your unborn daughter's life in jeopardy. And I'll be fricking damned if I'm going to let you get away with such an atrocity. All right. You've made your statement, Your Highness. Now why don't you go to the store and buy me a magazine? What are you talking about? I don't have time to take care of you. What? My legs are still in so much pain, Kobe, and I'm in no condition to move from my bed. Then crawl to the store for all I fricking care, Nathan Davis. Don't spoil yourself just because you have sore feet. I left the hospital room and didn't dare look back. I didn't want to be in the same space as my husband for even a second more, and I sure as hell didn't want my darling Carly to have a father like that. When I got home, I called for Mr. and Mrs. Davis, who were taking care of my daughter. Mrs. Davis handed Carly over to me as I sat down in an armchair and waited for them to sit down. I want to divorce Nathan. What? What? Needless to say, they were surprised at my sudden announcement, but they nevertheless were very generous and reasonable, and went on to listen to me very intently. I told them what their son did the day I gave birth to Carly, and everything that happened at the hospital today. I don't doubt you, dear, but would you mind if I make a decision after hearing Nathan's side of the story? This is so much to process, and you understand if a parent finds the notion that their child is actually a soulless piece of shit hard to believe? Of course. I had just welcomed a new member into my family, and I didn't expect to have to talk about divorce. But all I could feel was disgust for that bastard. My heart continued to grow dark. Just the night when I was abandoned, perhaps for dead, and there was no light left to shine. The next day, my parents-in-law went to visit Nathan, and then came to my place again afterwards. It turned out that even in front of his own parents, Nathan admitted that he had abandoned me, and that it was because he couldn't stand the fact that my water had broken, ruining his precious car. I can only think it was fortuitous that he went and told his own parents of his atrocious act of cruelty without making any attempt to make things right. I can only say that you have every right to be angry, Kobe. It's our fault for raising such a heartless bastard. We're really sorry, dear. It's really no wonder you want us all out of your life. I'm sorry too, Mr. Davis, Mrs. Davis. I'm sure we can all agree that we were negligent about different things, and we were at fault with different things as well. But I cannot forgive Nathan for treating my daughter's life as though it was completely irrelevant. No, dear, we don't deserve your apology. I am ashamed of him, and such a bastard was never my son. We're so sorry that we couldn't teach our child the most important things as a human being, Kobe. I will accept responsibility, and I will make sure your life and Carly's will be treated as they should be, with deep care, love, and respect. You don't have to worry about that fool anymore, my dear. Mark my words. Saying so, and many more words of apology, my parents-in-law bowed their heads countless times that evening. I really don't think they are the ones who should be apologizing to me, though, and I felt so bad that they felt so responsible. For their sake, as well as mine and my daughter's, I was going to end this once and for all. When I formally asked Nathan for a divorce, he adamantly refused and called me a whore for abandoning him injured. If I'm a whore, then you're enough of a bastard that Jesus would foresee this particular sin of yours and say, yeah, nope, sorry, humanity, you're on your own. When his parents repeatedly and patiently told my husband how outrageous what he had done was, he simply stood steadfast beside his own brain-dead arguments and showed no remorse for what he had done. 4 months later, our divorce was finalized, having never seen his newborn daughter even once. The money he was counting on to buy a new car went to alimony and child support. In fact, he even had to borrow money from Mr. Davis. Looks like he won't be able to spend money on a car for a while. I also heard talk that he wants to see his daughter, but that scumbag is not qualified to call himself a father because he can't even reflect on the act of cruelty he inflicted upon his daughter. But if Carly, having grown up enough, wishes to see her father, I will respect her wish. But I won't ever suggest that she meets him. I will never forgive him for what he did, and I promised Carly I would protect her from such a bastard if it was the last thing I did. I still keep in touch with the Davises by sending them photographs of their growing granddaughter, and every once in a while I invite them over for dinner. I am grateful that Carly has grandparents who love her so very much. At 4 months old, she's starting to be able to keep her own head upright, and she's also showing interest in things around her. And yup, she puts things in her mouth whenever she picks them up. And my paranoia was probably justified, honestly. I have to be more and more careful, but I also want to satisfy her curiosity without being too nervous. Gotta find the right balance, essentially. For now, though, I'm just looking forward to seeing her grow into a bright, strong girl, and I'm going to do my best to provide her with everything she'll ever need.